Hello, welcome back to the Convo Couch, ladies and gentlemen. I am Pastor Jardula, and I have a great guest with me today. Today, to discuss the caravan and what's going on in Central America and all the problems we face with immigration, we have Rachel Bruhnke, who's an educator who was also in the Peace Corps for several years and has a specialty on Latin American affairs. Rachel, thank you for joining me again.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just talk about this caravan. We got a picture of the caravan behind me. Where are the majority of these people coming from and why?
Well, the majority are coming from Honduras, and they're also coming from Guatemala and El Salvador. So I was a Peace Corps volunteer for 3 years in Honduras in the mid 90s. And you know, since then, I mean, it was bad enough when I was there, and the country's run by kind of a military junta, the wealthy, and you have a lot of the Honduran population, great people, but simple farmers that really have never been given a voice in their democracy. So they elected about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, they elected a man named Zelaya, and you know, they loved him. He was like a Bernie Sanders for them, and he was making the changes they needed to make, and we couldn't handle that. So we helped to foster a coup against the country in 2009, which brought in a man, his last name was Lobos, which ironically means wolves. So they basically brought in the wolves. They took out a Bernie Sanders type, they brought in a Trump type, and the people have been in resistance ever since. Yeah. And so that first government lasted for a couple of years. Then they brought in a man, Juan Orlando Hernandez, and he supposedly won in 2013. And he was ruling the country, but the country was still in resistance. And then they tried finally, Pasta, to have an election. A year ago in November, actually exactly a year ago in 2017, and the progressive candidate was just about to win. The electoral tribunal was saying that he was 5 points ahead. There was no way he could not win, and all of a sudden there was a blackout in the election monitoring. Literally, the lights went out for several hours. And when the lights came on again, of course, the man had lost, and in came again Juan Orlando Hernandez. Yes. And so the irony of this is that the first president, Manuel Zelaya, was kicked out because apparently he wanted to run more than once, and that isn't allowed by the Constitution. And here we have right under our noses Hernandez, who did it again, and no one says anything. And so... Yeah.
Well, let me just jump in real quick. Let me jump in real quick because I want us to kind of talk about Manuel Zelaya, because in 2009 he was democratically elected in Honduras, and he was more of a socialist Bernie Sanders type mentality. Now, we've been screaming at the top of our throats, Rachel.
He didn't call himself a socialist. Okay, Bernie would be more left in that way. I mean, God, you cannot call yourself a socialist in Central America and get away with it. So.
At all.
But yeah, he was
demonized.
But what he was doing is he was, you know, so I lived there for 3 years. The country is agricultural. It's an agricultural based economy. Yes. And so what I tell my students is, if you have an agricultural based economy and you have people without land, that can't function. So what he was starting to do was to give peasants land so they could be self-sufficient. You know, a lot of this and a lot of the money being poured are American tax dollars, being poured into Central America is supposedly, you know, with a right understanding. We don't want, and they, you know, people don't want to leave their homes in Central America, and we don't want a flood of people here. I get it. But what our answer always is war, militarism, aggression, punishment. And that's just, you know, that's just not the way to go. So the money that we're pouring into there is meant to, you know, push back on these reforms that are very much needed. So these people needed these reforms, and we wouldn't allow them.
Yeah. And you said, I want to really harp on what you said as far as, it's people don't want to leave Honduras. It's that they're forced to leave because we're actually funding these coups that turn the country into a war zone, and they have no choice but to leave, right? I mean, we've also talked about this before.
Yes, and a couple of other things is that, you know, the country wasn't functioning well beforehand, and so they elected someone to help. And the irony is that Manuel Zelaya was helping the poor, was helping the people who migrate generally, and he would have helped. He would have.
Did we lose her?
Things would be better, and we have to start getting honest. But I will also tell you is, again, that they weren't functioning well beforehand, because we have historic, and I know we're going to talk about the 80s, and you know, we can go back 100 years with Honduras. But I'll never forget, there's another Peace Corps volunteer when I was there, and he did a great thing. He was a photographer, and he made a calendar of the country. So he had 12 gorgeous pictures of this gorgeous country, Honduras. And I'll never forget showing a little girl there, one of the girls in my town. And as I showed her every picture, she would say, "Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Is that the United States?" I say, "No, honey, it's your country." And I'd flip to February. "Oh, that's so beautiful. Is that the United States?" "No, it's your country, honey." And people don't have a love and an appreciation of their own country, because we shove a model of what the world should look like all over them. We spend over $1 trillion a year in advertising our way of life to the world, because rightly so, we want people to buy our products, you know. But that's one of the problems with capitalism. We overproduce, and we got to sell, and then we got to push a line of goods that everyone needs to live like we do in the United States, and people don't generally appreciate where they live. So one, the country isn't functioning. Two, we do everything we can to make people think their own country sucks, so they have to buy our home products. And then third, we push coups on them, so that makes their lives untenable. And then we blame them for coming here. So, yeah.
Well, do you think that the reason for these coups that we support are more because, number one, we don't want our own people to see a socialistic mentality type of government work, where they're giving back the land to the indigenous people you talked about, where they're actually funding unions and helping the working man out there to live right? Or is it more about just grabbing that agriculture, like the Chiquita bananas, whatnot? Or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, it's definitely a combination of both, but I would definitely say maybe the greater fear is, I mean, if you think about it, if a country like Honduras is an agricultural exporter, if you treat them fairly and have, fair prices that you're going to pay, American business people will, still make out. But the issue is, and the message has got to be, is that life needs to be about make a living, not a killing.
Yeah.
And the American system is about making a killing no matter what. So, yeah. So, you have that business interest, but also, God forbid, you have the American people wake up to another possibility of the way things can run. If we nationalized our oil, if we had fair housing prices, heck, I've been calling when I ran for assembly, last year, I was talking about land reform. And these are concepts that I learned living in Central and South America about land reform. We need the American people also to have access to land, whether it's a city or the rural countryside, with some semblance of security. Yeah. We don't have that. Proposition 10 is probably going to be voted down tomorrow, but it's definitely going to have to come to feeling the sense of security. And yeah, the American capitalists are terrified of us seeing a different model.
Yeah, it's one of the things too, Rachel, because I watched the movie Y Tu Mamá También, which is a beautiful movie about Mexico and about these beaches and just life. And I kept saying to myself, why would anybody want to leave these beautiful areas and stuff? The climate is great. The land is fruitful. Why are these people migrating here all the time? And then we see all this interaction. Now, it's not just about what Obama and Hillary Clinton did, and then Donald Trump again in 2017, following up. It's policies that go back to the 80s. We talked about it. 1982, the coup in Guatemala. 1984, the funding of the Salvadorian army that killed so many of their civilians, where they have the one side walking around with American-made guns. And then about $20 million in aid in 1986, all under the Reagan administration, going to fund these coups that turn these countries upside down. Okay? I mean, isn't it in our blood? Isn't this the same type of mentality and policies that have started back then that are still going on today? And why haven't Trump fans or Trump followers realized, hey, man, if you really want to stop the flow of immigration, let's stop funding these coups with American tax dollars.
That's okay. So when Trump 2 years ago first said his vile things about Mexicans, about immigrants, they're rapists and they're murderers and all that. We went, because we're only about, in San Pedro, we're only about a mile from the Trump golf course.
Yeah.
And so come on down for a protest sometime. We're still doing them. But anyway, we went immediately out there and we said, the wealthy are the rapists of the planet, and the wealthy steal from the workers, etc. So we were turning his language back on him. But I also made a sign, and I use it in a lot of protests, is that U.S. wars lead to U.S. immigration. And so I want to tell you, and I invite everyone from around the country, but in Los Angeles, we're going to have a big delegation, and we're going down in a little over a week. We're going down to the border of Ambos Nogales, Arizona. It's a town that's on both sides of the border. And we're going to be going to the School of the Americas watch in the border, their annual encounter. The School of the Americas, some of your viewers might not know, is a school in Fort Benning, Georgia. Yep. That since the late 1940s, okay, we're talking the Cold War. And I'd like all your viewers, please, to look up the hashtag. I don't know much how to do it on social media, but we did about a year ago a panel of people who have lived through this. We call it the Cold War Truth Commission. We're taking on the Cold War. Anyway, School of the Americas was started in the late 40s to train military personnel for Latin America. So while Cuba has a medical school that trains poor people from around the world to be doctors to go around the world to help poor people, we right here in Fort Benning, Georgia, are training military personnel to go back to Latin America, torture, repression, all the CIA tactics. So School of the Americas Watch used to protest out in front of Fort Benning, Georgia. Now we're going to be on the border. So please look for us out there. Please come if you can, because we're going to be there in solidarity with the people fleeing U.S. foreign policy. And we really, really want to make a point. I'm on the board of Witness for Peace Southwest. We're the ones doing the delegation from here, is make the point that we can no longer have the hypocrisy of the American people. They don't know, but as soon as they know, they need to change their minds. Yeah. People go, oh, it's so much to take in. I can't change everything. I say, don't change everything. Just change your mind.
Well, yeah.
And start working on solutions.
I think the fact that the only silver lining of this whole caravan right now is that people are starting to open up the questions of why are these people coming? Why are things so bad? I mean, we've been screaming at the top of our throats about this, Rachel. It's why I had such a liking, and I speak to you every day about this, because all these issues we talk about, immigration from both sides of the spectrum, are never looking at the real issue of why these people are coming here. Are there any politicians that are like leading the pack on this? Are there any politicians that are talking about this? And if not, why? And this is the last question, because we got to wrap it up here. But why aren't there any politicians leading out with this?
It's a big can of worms. And like you said, when we were talking about this, they're all complicit, because Fidel said something once. I want to give our viewers some hope. He said, I don't think America could become fascist because there's too much civil society. There's too many people horizontally working and resisting. It couldn't. He says, but your foreign policy is already fascist.
Yes, it is.
And yes, it is. And so people, they end up not caring. And so, but here's the thing, is that so many people have been to Central America. So many people have been to Cuba. So many people from Latin America live here. This can of worms isn't going to be quieted down. And I want to say one thing. Archbishop Oscar Romero, who was gunned down in 1980 in El Salvador while giving mass, which was like the spark for the violent resistance.
American weapons killed him, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. He was canonized a couple of weeks ago by the Catholic Church. I mean, I just want to, people were so wrapped up in this. Let's try not get ourselves crazy. This is a long road, but it's a beautiful road towards justice. This man was just canonized. And like I was telling you before, I consider this beautiful, beautiful caravan of suffering but strong people to be a pilgrimage.
Yeah.
And it's coming to the United States, and we're going to the border in solidarity. And never, never let anyone speak in ignorance or hate about the simple people of Central America. I show a movie in my class. It's called Wetback, and I really recommend it for people. It's all about people coming from Central America, and it really, really shows what these people are like, but it also shows the Minutemen in Arizona. And after I show the movie, I ask my students, I say, you know, the Minutemen, they love God, they love their home, they love their country, they're simple family people. I said, who are they like in this movie? And they say, the immigrants. I say, yeah, people need to understand that they have a lot more in common than differences. And I'm sorry, if they're racist and won't listen, they need to be shamed. So it's time to be shaming the haters. And we're taking it to the border next week.
Well, we should take it to the border. There's a couple other good movies we have to talk about. People need to get more informed about that. That movie with Tom Cruise when he was a CIA agent, American Made. That's going to talk about how the drugs get back and forth through the CIA. And then you got the guy Freeway Rick Ross. A lot of people don't know about Freeway Rick Ross, how he actually sold, the CIA sold crack cocaine on the streets to fund the Contra and all these groups down south that really just murdered these people and have caused this caravan to come here. Last question, Rachel. The people in the caravan, do they deserve asylum here in the United States, yes or no?
Absolutely. You know, there's only several thousand. Of course, they're pumping up the numbers, 7,000. There's only several thousand right now. But, you know, 350,000 Hondurans have left since our U.S. supported and U.S. backed coup 10 years ago. In the last 5 years, just 52,000 minors, unaccompanied little kids came from Honduras. So this is like a tragedy, and definitely they should be given asylum. But what I was thinking about this today, you know, they also don't necessarily want to come and stay. They want their country to be better. What we need to do is change the way we treat Central America and change our foreign policy.
Absolutely.
Help people, help people beautify and improve their own countries, which they know how to do. And here's the thing, let's stop funding the freaking U.S. war making machine around the world and U.S. training. Let's put I work with American young people. I don't want to see them learn how to kill and go out and hate about all I want to see them employed in beautiful, beautiful international and national work that we need to come in solidarity and peace and sustainability with the world. So we can do that. I was in the Peace Corps for 3 years. I know there's a lot of, high ranking bullshit that goes on with the Peace Corps, but those of us on the ground, we loved our catrachos, our
guanacas from Salvador, and our chapines from Guatemala. We love them. We love them.
Ticas. We love Central America.
I really think, though, Rachel, that like you hit it on the nose there, and I just want to say it. And I tell a lot of Trump supporters, I tell my mother, her friends, and everybody who talks about the immigrants that are putting such a strain on the economy in America. Well, hey, if you want the flow of immigration to stop, tell Donald Trump to stop funding the coups and funding the oppositions in South and Central America. Hey, we did it in 1964 in Brazil. We supported fascism. In 1973 in Chile, when Augustus Pinochet, we supported him. We did it against Manuel Zelaya. We're doing it right now by supporting the opposition to Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua. I think it's time to stop. And I tell those Trump supporters...
1954, Guatemala.
Of course. 1982 in Guatemala. Again, the Chapines. Yeah. So I tell these Trump supporters, hey, tell your president he campaigned as a non-interventionist. Let's pull our tax dollars out of there, and we'll stop the flow of immigration by tenfold. Coming from your mouth, you said on our last show, didn't you, Rachel Bruhnke?
Yep.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Rachel Bruhnke. We want to have a little bit more conversations. We're going to keep our eyes on the caravan or the people or the pilgrimage, whatever they want to call it. I don't care. Let's just stop funding these coups in Central and South America. Thank you for joining us, Rachel Bruhnke.
Thank you, Pasta.
We'll see you soon. Convo out.